Welcome back, everyone, to another segment of the MCR. Mac and me doing the Skype thing, coming at you from Southeast Michigan. Okay. In this segment, I wanted to share an article that I read last week from one of my favorite websites, the Gateway Pundit, and it referenced, I'm going to call it the societal collapse within the city of Chicago, and how Lori Lightfoot seems to be, I don't know if it's oblivious, naive, or she's just chosen to look the other way. But I'll tell you what, right now, I wouldn't want to live in Chicago. And in reading this news article, my mind went back to a conversation that Mac and I used to work with a guy who will remain nameless, and we were having a political back and forth. And I asked him, and it involved urban violence and how dangerous Detroit was. And I've had my share of, gunplay in Detroit, we'll say. But I asked our coworker, I said, where would I, as a white man, be safer? Walking down the streets of Detroit tonight, or doing a Humvee patrol through Baghdad? I said, where would I be safer? And he stopped and thought about it. And I immediately launched into, you've already answered. The fact that you had to stop and think about it, this should have been a no-brainer, but you had to stop and think. Where would I really be safer at? And Mac, you were present at the time of my little rant. Do you want to throw in any comments at this point?
Well, there's something I wish you had mentioned, and you'd have taken it a step further, which was, as a black man, and he was a black fellow, good guy by all accounts, I would say. We liked him. But where would he have been safer? In Detroit suburbs or walking the streets of Detroit?
Well, I almost think he too would have been safer doing a Humvee patrol in Baghdad.
Of course. Yeah.
As crazy as that even sounds. But I reflected on this exchange, this conversation, when I read about what was going on in Chicago. The report is arrest rates have collapsed to 5%. Okay, and I was able to look up a chart here, Chicago City Data Portal, and it shows the percentage of arrests, reported crimes with recorded arrests of Chicago, and for instance, here we go. In 2019, there was a 36% arrest rate for homicide. That's dropped to 28% today, or last year. Criminal sexual assault in 2019 was 8%, and it's dropped to 3% as of last year. Aggravated bad.
Let me stop you there for a second. So if you're a woman and you get raped in Chicago, it seems like there's a 97% chance that the perpetrator is going to get away with it.
Yeah. Well, the word in the Detroit metropolitan area was most criminals really don't serve any significant time. Yes, there is a chance they'll be found. There is a chance they'll be identified. There's a chance they'll be arrested. There's a chance they'll be prosecuted. There's even a chance they might be found guilty. But at the end of the day, do they really do any time? I mean, you've heard me rant about the guy that shot me, plea bargained into a lesser assault charge, and maybe didn't even do 3 years.
Right.
And that was in Detroit. Okay. But motor vehicle theft went from 6% down to 3%. Theft 10% down to 4%. And I'm reflecting on 2019 to 2022, by the way.
Okay.
So every category dropped in regards to the percentage of arrest. Okay.
Well, the first question that comes to my mind is it the police not wanting to interact with criminal types, or in particular, there are certain ethnic racial types that they are going to be accused of some kind of crime and have no backing from the mayor's office whatsoever? Or
Oh,
is it a matter of lack of prosecution? What's the cause?
it is, liberalism. Some men aged 18 to 29, the annual rate of firearm homicides in that zip code was 1,277 per 100,000 in 2021 and generally in 2022. They compared that to troops in a heavily engaged combat brigade in Iraq at 675 per 100,000. So it
It's
was
double.
almost doubled. Not almost. Well, yeah, it was about almost doubled of what combat troops are exposed to.
So the question that begs to be answered is, are you safer in Iraq in a combat zone than you are in the city of Chicago?
Oh, and by the way, they were using let me see if I have it here or not. They were referencing the zip code 60624 in that particular piece of data. That they expanded the surrounding zip codes, and I guess it dropped to 10%. But they said even the surrounding zip codes, they faced greater risks than the soldiers that were dying in Afghanistan and Iraq. You know, uh, they were compelled to mention there's also zip codes in Philadelphia that surpass the risk of combat death also. So Philadelphia, they were compelled to mention Philadelphia, even though the article itself was dealing primarily with Chicago.
Well, what you have, Philadelphia, Democrats, Detroit, Democrats,
And
Chicago, Democrats.
remember, I want to say a month or so ago, I did a solo on that one gas station where the guy brought in soldiers. I mean,
Yeah.
they were private, highly trained, well armed security. They were soldiers. Okay,
Mhm.
they were armed and geared up to the extent of your average soldier.
Someone might call them mercenaries.
Well, okay, soldiers of fortune.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, they say Lori Lightfoot seems totally oblivious to this. And is it by choice? Is she that blinded? Is she just that naive? I mean, how can there are a couple questions come to mind. How can a mayor be like this? How can the people vote for a mayor to be like this? I mean,
Well,
you know what?
they're not going to vote for a Republican of any ilk. I mean, Jesus could run as a Republican in Chicago and not win.
I mean,
That's a corrupt city. Democrats have run it for forever. Excuse me. They've run it forever. Everywhere there's Democrats, there's high crime. They want to destroy America, and this is a way to do it.
We're venturing into the definition of insane.
Yes.
Because it lacks that much common sense. So that's all I got for this segment. I just, like I said, when I first read this news article, my mind immediately shot back to the conversation you and I had 15 years ago.
Well, I think your question and your point was proven now, has been proven some 15 years later or whatever.
You know what? So it's gone beyond my theory then. Because that was just, I theorize a lot. And I was theorizing back then, So yeah, it's not a theory anymore, I guess. So that's all I got. Any final thoughts, comments?
No, sir.
All right, as you were. All right, catch you in the next segment. As always, be safe, watch your six, and don't tread on me.